Oh, there we go.
Molly, you are muted if you were saying something.
It's such a fail. It's such a Friday fail. I was just saying hi, Cindy.
Now it's being recorded. Good suggestion. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start us off at the forms portion of the website. So I'm going to share screen number 1. And here we go. Thanks to Marlon's wonderful work, we have the forms section of the website is updated now with 2122 on top. And 2021, because we still have a lot of those things up and around on the bottom. So those are all active and live. I think there's 1 or 2 forms that we're still putting some finishing touches on that'll get up there, but this is the vast majority. And in case you didn't know, I got here by going to pointloma.edu/SFS forms, which is a quick link that just gets you right here. So that's a helpful thing that we, short link that we have IT create for us. So I'm going to take a look at a few of the forms that were updated. There we go. One of them being our pastor or missionary child discount form. So we had some confusion this year about who gets an update, who gets a full form, who has a new pastor child initial form, and who has a revised list. So there was some confusion with students and families as to which form families actually needed to complete. There was some back and forth between, well, you did this one, you should have done this one. To try to help with that, we just moved it into one form, and then just within this form, it says, if you're in this situation, fill out these portions. So that was the reasoning for combining this into one form and trying to help provide further clarifying language within this. So I want to point out a few of those things. A lot of it still looks very similar to what our initial missionary pastor child discount form was before, with these kind of call out sections of what we mean when we say pastor child or a missionary child. And what this application actually does for a student. So none of that has changed. I think a few phrasing issues and phrasing things in there, but the big change is this section at the bottom of page 1. So it's this little chart that we're hoping that families will look through and read and say, okay, this is the section that applies to me. So for students who are coming in and saying this is their brand new student for 2122, they are saying this is a new application for a pastor or missionary child discount. And click this, and they would, so to indicate their situation. And it would say, I need to fill out sections A, B, C, D, and E. I'd fill out this whole form. So I'm clicking this, and so then I know I need to fill out all of these sections, which follow after this. If I'm not, this is not a brand new, maybe I'm a returning student, I want to say, okay, well, I am returning, but nothing really has changed. So I could say, I am renewing this discount. Oops, sorry. I jumped to 3. The second one is, I'm renewing this, but something has changed. So my dad actually moved to, or my mom actually moved to a different church. So I'm changing because my parents is now at a different church. Or I'm renewing this because their role has changed. So parents' assignment could have changed. If that's more missionary speak, they're in a different country now. Their role at the church has changed. Could be that. Their denomination has changed. They're still a pastor, but they've forsaken the Nazarene church and moved to be an honored Presbyterian. So it's always possible. And in which case, it's like they're a brand new person. So they would also fill out all of the sections of this form.
Oh, we're gonna get gas, right? you want
Please do
to,
mute
I
yourself
guess.
if you're
Yeah,
as
okay,
you're
so I could pay
coming
attention
in.
more.
I think that's Marlon. But looking at the bottom option, there would be renewing this tuition discount, which is saying essentially you're renewing and nothing has changed. So they don't need to provide as much information as the other circumstances. So we had this as a little like, oh no, I'm renewing and all three of the bottom are checked. So my parent has not changed their assignment. The church has not changed. The assignment's not changed. Denomination has not changed. Everything is the same. So they're going to fill out sections A, B, and E. So they can skip C and D. That is the purpose of this chart. Hopefully, and it avoids the need to only have partial information on different forms, people filling out the wrong forms. Everyone gets the same form to fill out. So that is the purpose of doing it this way. As we go down, then these sections that are listed here, A, B, C, D, E, are noted down here. So section A, which is the one that is trying to say that the student is actually a dependent of the parent who's in ministry. Section B is asking about that housing allowance, and this is a bit of an expansion of that section of the form, asking for a 2019 and a 2020 amount, which will kind of help us moving forward as we compare housing allowances. So it's looking at 2 years for that, a housing allowance, a parsonage, and food or other living allowances. So that is asking for the same type of information. It's just expanded out to be looking at 2 years to help us when we do kind of some year-over-year comparisons. And section C, in case they didn't read it up in the top box, this also has a little highlighted area that says, remember, this is only for new applicants or renewal applicants with the status change. Because if you remember at the bottom of here, if they're not changing anything, they shouldn't be filling out, or they won't need to fill out section C or D. So there's a reminder in section C and D, I assume, that tells you, remember, don't have to fill this out if you're in that situation. So this is the same types of questions that were on here before. We did reorder in this information and denomination of ministry. We reordered this address section to be above where it says Nazarene or other than Nazarene. It kind of implied before that you only had to fill out the address if you checked other than Nazarene. So moving it above those options, I think it will help with that confusion. Section D, again, is for new applicants or renewal applicants with the status change. So section D is the same as it was before. And section E is just the signing of the form. Print the name, parent ministry, signature of the parent ministry, date, and sending it in. So we're hopeful that this decreases confusion and allows for students to submit one version of the form rather than needing to go back and forth with multiple missing information. There's always the challenge of getting the accompaniments to this form of a letter from the church, and but that is all spelled out, and we're hopeful that this will help prevent some of the back and forth. Any questions on this form before we look at another one? Okay, I need to expand my view so I can see if there are any other shaking heads. Okay, great. So that is for 21-22. We're not changing any of the form for the current year. So if someone still happens to, which we do have a handful of students who have yet to complete it for 2021, they need to complete the 2021 form. So this is phasing in for 21-22 and beyond, because this will be a great form that we'll use forever. Okay. Next one I wanted to look at is Actually, that one hasn't changed, so we'll save that for a second, is the Angel Fund application. This used to be called Angel Fund and Crossroads. Crossroads is no more. We don't have any more Crossroads funding, and at this point, at least, University Advancement has not fundraised for that program. We do still have a chunk of Angel Fund programming, and I think I heard rumors of more fundraising going for that program as well. So Angel Fund is alive and well, and so now this application specifies Angel Fund instead of Angel and Crossroads. That's the biggest difference. It is also worth noting that we encourage students to have more information than just saying, I need some help. There are some criteria outlined that the student's on track to complete a degree within 4 years. This was on the form before as well. They have cumulative GPA of 2.8 or higher, successful completion. They're at least they've been through at least one semester with us. Documented significant unmet financial need, and then this recommendations from their advisor and faculty sponsors strongly encouraged. So we haven't required that, but it does. I think it does mean more when we have an endorsement from a faculty or academic advisor for these situations. So it's another way for university advancement when they consider these applications, another way for them to see that someone from the institution endorses them, says that they're a really good fit for Point Loma. We really want to work to keep them here. So it can be influential in the decisions. So while I am kind of assembling the information for the Angel Fund, I do kind of put these pieces together and give a summary to University Advancement, who makes the decisions on who gets the Angel Funds or not. So they actually do it blind. So they just get a summary of the information without knowing who the student is, and then they can select from the summary. So that is the update on this form. It still has the EFC unmet need. Those things are helpful in determining kind of amounts that a student would be helpful for the student. Major GPA, expected graduation is kind of more demographic. I know that often we do this via email, or students getting kind of a summary of their situation, which is, see, as I look at this, should also ask for a summary of their current situation, which determines the need for an Angel Fund. So we may actually have one more update to make on this form, but where I was going with that was we often do this through email, and so a handwritten signature is not necessarily necessary for this, but just to make sure that we know it's coming from the student is the goal. So we do want some of the students' input from this with their summary of what their situation is. A family summary coming from a parent is good as well. We've had a few situations where a third party kind of comes in, whether it's a faculty member or a concerned citizen comes in and identifies some students, which is very helpful. With that, then we would want some sort of follow-up from the student or family themselves to describe their situation, rather than just coming from an outside concerned party as well. So, any questions on the Angel Fund application?
Daniel, in the past, I think that we have awarded Angel Fund to freshmen before, but is there still a feeling that we want to be kind of careful with doing that? Because if we're fixing a problem that first year, we're kind of creating a 4-year, not problem, I don't want to say it like that, because there's always a circumstance where we might want to do this, but are we looking more for like a junior senior situation here, or how do we feel about that?
Good question. And I would say it would be more likely to have a higher amount go to an upperclassman. So trying to get them to graduation. I agree. It is a challenge to get an award to a freshman who then may need that level of help again the next couple of years. So it's with no guarantee that that's going to come again. So that's I agree that the junior senior is a better fit for this program, but there are situations where we've done for underclassmen. So preference to upperclassmen, I would say. Yes.
So the typical financial aid answer, it depends.
Yes. Okay. Next is the Cal Grant form. And yes. Yeah, be quiet, you can stay. Next is a Cal Grant form. So this one really hasn't changed, but I did want to point out that with the Cal Grant B access form, so there's a new one, and this, the only thing that is updated is the year in school. Sorry, the academic year, 21-22. This is a process where we need students to tell us what they want us to do with their Cal B access money. So whether it should go straight to their student account or be refunded to them in the form of a check. And and this process really is run by advisors. So we have to have it updated in PowerFids, so PowerFids knows what to do with it. But then as far as if there's request of a check, then the advisors have a process to set that up, do the check request, and get that out to the student. There's an interesting option that they have with the Cal B access funds to get it directly to them. It's kind of like the idea of kind of like a book advance for Pell Grants. So along with that same nature of that fund. So if there are further questions on that process, feel free to consult within the student accounts team, as I'm not as familiar with the check request process, but that process is working well now, to my understanding. All right. So that was a quick one for that. The next one I wanted to look at was our appeal forms. So we have had several, we have had several updates to our appeal forms throughout this year to try to make the appeal process better for families. And that's always a complicated process, but a very important process for families to be involved in. And a great way for us to help out families in a time of high stress and high need. So this was a different perspective than what we did with the PCD form. With the PCD forms, we try to combine into one so that people going back and forth would not end up missing things. With this one, our PJ form was getting so long that people were just missing pieces and not necessarily checking all the boxes needed. And then there's lots of back and forth of what information was needed. So the idea of this is to have more of the upfront conversation with the family of what is your circumstance that you're going through. And based on that circumstance, we can guide you to the correct form. So right now there's a whole bunch of appeal forms that are listed at the top of the forms and documents. And let me zoom in a little bit here to see if that'll help. Again, this is posted on the website, but hopefully that's helpful for the sharing. Where if we're just talking about a change in family size, there's a new child or a new grandparent or something who moved into the household, that an appeal for a change in family size looks at this form specifically. We don't need as much information on something like that that we do on something that's more income related. So it's trying to specify in to the information that we actually need for that situation. If we need, if there's a death of a parent or death of a spouse, then this specifically asks for the information for that situation. We're looking for an independent appeal. That's a form specifically for that situation. We're just renewing that independent appeal, trying to get the information specifically for that. So I think you get the idea. Our most common one, loss of income. So I'm going to go ahead and click into that one. And it should look very familiar, because we didn't change much content on these, but just the idea of splitting them out. So this is a 3-page form instead of the 5 or 7, whatever it was before, to try to get specifically at the information that we need to make a decision on this, this income change. Page 1 and 2 is the appeal form. Page 3 is the clarification of household size, which, and even on that one, we've specified between the dependent version of this form and the independent version of this form to only reference the things that are needed. So the independent version of even the clarification of household size form asks for a spouse if applicable, rather than asking for parent 1, parent 2, or spouse. So trying to simplify the form itself so that it will be easier for the family to complete. And as we have on all of our forms now, is this COVID related, as there may be some additional options that we have for them if that is the case. So I'm going to go back to our forms page. So I realize that this does create quite a few different forms, but I am hopeful that with conversations with families before they start this form, or with a family going in looking for the form on our website, these headings will be fairly self-explanatory. And if they have a question, they can call in and say which form is applicable to me, and they can talk through what their situation is to get to the right form, and hopefully get us the information we're looking for the first time it comes in. So it's a lot of the incentive to do this, or the reasoning for doing this, was trying to streamline that PJ process, which I know is a lot of the reason we did a lot of changes on our forms this year, throughout the year. So it seemed like some of the changes we made were not necessarily getting the results that we wanted in less back and forth with families. So with this perspective, really dialing in on what the specific need of the appeal is. And we're hopeful that it will give us the information from the first time. Any questions or concerns or suggestions on this appeal form process?
No, thank you.
Thanks, Mo. All right. Cool.
Can I ask a question on this?
Certainly.
We on these forms, we want to make sure that we narrowed everything down. These were also based on the advisor's suggestions also on the forms. I just want to make sure that, because this last year, we changed the form almost 4 or 5 times to try and narrow it down. And we want to try and do this to make it a minimum. So please, before we release these forms, please review them and really ask questions, because I don't want to change the form 4 times during the academic year again. Because then we have so many forms floating around, and I don't know where students get the old forms and we posted new forms, and it just created a little mess. So we want to make sure that this is the final form. So if you have a chance, please review them.
And that is, yeah, while we have already received one appeal for the 21-22 year, we would be good to know any changes to make before they really start coming in. A good point. And so there was a lot of work done based on the review process that we had this year. So big thanks to Marlon, especially, who did all of these changes. So round of applause, especially since she's on the line. And thank you to each of you who also looked at the forms before and made suggestions. It really does make a difference. And we do try to address all of the suggestions that go into that. So Marlon does a great job of putting all that information together to create something new and improved. So that's just lots of good work done there.
Cracking on me. Oh, so clearing.
All right. The next, I want to look at were the loan forms. So I'm going to go back and could do a loan adjustment form. That was another one that also was updated a few times, or well, once or twice during this year. There were no updates to this form for the 21-22 year, but I did want to walk through it just because that's another common one that comes up. And we're making good time through our other forms. So, and I'll zoom in on that one a little bit too. So our loan adjustment forms haven't been updated, but didn't have any changes for the 21-22 year. So it's has the same type of idea where checking in to see if this is a change on a subsidized loan, unsubsidized, direct plus, or private loan. Stating if there's a parent name and parent borrower, if it's a plus loan. So the same type of things that need to be completed. Looking at which session or which term that the student that this change needs to be applied on. Saying if it's an increase, a decrease, or a full cancellation. Or in an other box, as we've had some reinstatements. So I imagine those would have checked other. And looking at the gross amount. So just as a reminder, that's looking at the total award amount. So if a subsidized loan is at $3,500, we're not getting the exact net amount there. So what comes to the student account after the fees are taken out, looking at gross amounts to making these adjustments, that seems to cause the most, or be the most straightforward to be looking at those gross amounts. So if there's, and there are calculators also that I believe Mo has provided to, if you're looking to try to get from a net amount to a gross amount, to see how to guide the student through these forms. Then that helps you with that. Sometimes the student's looking to send back their credit balance to their loan. If they have a credit balance of 402, trying to get that to what that $405 gross amount would be. That was an estimate. Those calculators are helpful in completing these forms. And just giving a reason for the adjustment. Don't need any more restatement, other reason. And signing that. This is one that we do take through email, and it's nicely set up so that a student can type into it. If I were to download this form, it would let me type into there, and then click the little submit by email or print, depending on the student's preference. So have you seen any things that come up that this form doesn't quite fit the need for, or that students commonly fill out incorrectly?
I usually fill it out for them, like the numbers.
just to keep it simple. That way they don't have to do math.
And I think that's helpful.
This is Eva. I don't know. I may be a little dense, but this is not real clear to me. You want the gross amount of the year, the semester, and maybe you need to put a definition of what your gross amount is. I mean, what gross amount is. I don't know. It's still a little fuzzy to me. And like I said, maybe I'm just a little bit dense. But you said $3,500. What if so you want it as it's on the award letter before any fees are taken out? And then what if they do, so if you want the whole amount of the loan, or do you just want the spring portion that they want to reduce, or I don't know.
These are done by semester, Eva. So they're either done by semester or full year. That's why they check the box which ones they want, and they're supposed to base it on the amount that's there listed under offer letter. So.
Well, if you mark fall and spring, so you want $3,500 in the gross award, the first box.
That's looking at the full year, yeah. So if they want the
okay, so if you just mark fall, do you want $1,750 in there?
Yep, $750 or less. It's whatever their amount is. If they want to reduce the fall, that's all they can get, because we have to have even disbursements. So they're looking at each term.
We don't
So
have
whatever
to have
box
even
they check is
disbursements. What if
based
they
on
want
what their offer letter says.
What if they want to cancel their spring disbursement? Then their disbursement.
Then the gross amount will be zero.
If
the gross amount, the current gross would be $1,750.
No, they want to keep their $1,750 for fall, and they want to cancel their spring. So
they put zero in for desired gross change.
So that's not even.
I feel like what Eva's getting at is a student is the one that has to complete this form. And if it's not making sense to Eva, like a financial aid professional, it might not be making sense to a student. So I think like maybe it would be helpful to either define gross or say something in regards to the amounts, like it's specific to the term depending on the session. Is that kind of what you're saying, Eva?
Yeah, I think so. Like on that first box, it says current gross award amount, and there's no explanation under it. And then down below it says desired gross award amount, and then there is a little bit of clarification about what you want. I don't know. And like I said, maybe it's just me and I haven't had any coffee this morning, but it's a little. It seems a little.
The problem with this form that I'm seeing is that I'm looking at it as a math formula. It does not look like a math formula. When I'm seeing that gross amount, I'm supposed to subtract the amount with the change and then come up with the gross amount for that. So the wording does not make it right, because if I were looking at this form now, I'd look at, okay, I'm going to put $1,750. I want to reduce it to I want to reduce the loan. To cancel it, I have to put $1,750 in there again to get zero. So the wording on the side does not make sense if you're looking at it as math, because if you're looking at math, you want to have the amount you want to reduce it by, and then the desired gross amount. And you have this desired gross change. I think we just need to say what it is. What do you want to reduce it by?
I think one of the problems is the gross amount. I mean, us as advisors, the loan calculator to even figure it out. So we have to use a tool for us to have that number, because we can't just look at it and have that number.
Yeah,
so
we do that
when
too.
Students don't have that access to that tool, then how can we possibly have them fill this out? Then it makes it on our end that we're responsible for filling this out for the student. And really the student should be able to do this by themselves.
Yes, yes.
The original form, we did have the formula for it, but the students were still not doing the math. We actually said, please reduce by this percentage points. And then also because when sequestration happened where where the fees changed every October 1st, the form, it's like changing the percentage was like, oh, use this percentage before October 1st, use this percentage after,
Right.
it's like, and so it
So do we-
became, weird to have it that way.
Yeah, I don't think it's clear for a parent or a student to look at this, like if they're sitting at home and they're trying to complete this.
I feel that,
It's a little.
I think no matter how we revise it or even put any more wordings on there, I think we're still going to get a number of students and parents that will not understand it. Therefore, I think we need to sometimes walk them through this because it's some people are just not going to get it.
Yeah.
And that's, no matter how much we change it or make it even better, look better, it's not going to be to everyone. So I think we just have to walk them through it and explain it.
Well, see, the thing is, Nina's correct. We don't give them the tools to figure out how much they want to reduce it by, because when unfortunately we have to deal with net amounts. When they're looking at their student account, they say, oh, I want to get rid of my credit balance. But my credit balance, you have to actually increase the amount just to tell you what the gross amount is and stuff like that.
So should we instead ask them for net amounts only, and then it's just on our side to figure out how to make that change, because the student sees the net amount?
That might be better, which means the loan coordinator is going to have to do the math and figure
Sure.
it out.
Which is reasonable for us on our side to do.
I think we need to be really careful though, when a student is telling us on a piece of paper, this is the amount that I need, they're going to come back and say,
And
oh, well, that's what I thought I was borrowing. So, I mean, I think we either include the formulas below, whether or not they use it, but also include an explanation, gross equals amount borrowed, not amount dispersed.
Can we
I-
put like a disclosure if we use the net amounts, noting that there is a gross amount or something like the kind of the opposite, if you will, of what you're saying? Instead of the formulas, we do here's a disclosure, like you should understand you have this full amount in the signature part.
Yeah, I think we could have something like that. And so the challenge, I think, becomes, because I immediately start thinking about there being a calculation that's done on this sheet when a student fills it out, which is possible to do, but then we have how it changes on October 1st. So we would have a form for pre-October 1st and a form for post-October 1st. So that's a challenge in itself. Maybe just a standard statement saying that your gross amount is larger than this net amount, and say why. But,
Can we just say on the form somewhere that that fees are being taken out by the government, or something like that? I don't know. What's going to
Maybe
be
something-
dispersed is not going to be exactly what you think it's going to be because of the fees that are being taken out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like this amount is subject to an origination fee.
Yeah.
I think it would be better to deal with gross amounts myself, just because that's how they're under the awards in packaging. I mean,
The audience of the form is correct. They're only seeing the net amounts. They're only looking at their account.
Well,
We
they
don't-
look at their award letter too, Brad.
Yeah, I know it's their award letter, but most of the time they're looking at they're looking at like their credit balance.
Yeah.
They're
So-
not looking at their award letter to compare what's the gross amount. If anything else, what they're going to do is going to take that gross amount, subtract out the credit balance, and then we're going to be returning, just that
Sure.
amount, which is less than the credit balance, which means that they'll still end up with a credit balance on their account.
So we have on the GPS side, our forms, I was just comparing them. So ours is kind of like an equation where it says current loan amount plus desired change up or down equals desired total amount. And then
Which is
we
basically
have,
that.
and
Yeah.
at the bottom, we have where, and our assumption on GPS is that students are most likely not able to fill this out on their own. And they always are consulting with an advisor to help them figure out the amounts. But at the bottom, there's a section where the advisor can indicate if this is a gross loan calculation or net loan calculation. So leaving it kind of up to them because they know what the student was trying to do, I guess. Not that that's perfect, but just so you know how we've handled it there. But I do see we didn't, and we have a whole bunch of disclosures on ours. Like, I understand that if I request more money, then, you know, my repayment will be higher, yada, yada. But we don't have one about the loan fees. So that is actually a good recommendation to add to both of them, I think, just so students understand that.
And I think just having the plus and minus there, like you said, Jamie, would be very helpful. Like whether it's an increase or a decrease, it's, you know, the assumption that that's a calculation that you're taking the current gross amount and you're either subtracting or adding, getting the bottom number, whether it's, you know, gross or net. I like that. That makes it a little bit more clear.
Yeah.
And that's a question in itself. Do we want to use this as an internal form that a advisor uses to help guide the student through, or do we want this to be a student-friendly, student-facing form?
That's up to the advisors, because if to
Well, I
me,
think it's up to Stacy or like the loan coordinator, you know, because we regardless are going to have the conversation, and if we could get an email and then us complete the form to send it to Stacy, it's different than like, do we need a form for loan adjustment?
Well, I
the only
think
reason
that,
is we need authorization.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think the thing is when in the past, from my years of experience here with being an advisor, all the emails came in very unclear. So it would be like, I want $500. Sorry, baby's loud. And you didn't know, do they want that just in fall? Do they want that just in fall, spring? Do you know, like, how do they want it? And so that was the nice part of the form, is it spelled it out, and it's like, okay, here's what I'm hearing you say you want as an advisor is this, and then they sign off on it so they see it in writing what we're actually approving for them. So that's the part where I think the form is useful, because the emails, no matter how we tried, it was like, okay, write me back saying exactly this, and then they would just change it, and it was like never exactly what we needed for them to authorize it. So that's just my 2 cents on that part.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if it's a reinstatement, I think in those cases, the advisors are emailing me to reinstate loans or decline loans. Those are kind of easy and self-explanatory, just to reinstate or decline or what have you. But when it has to do with a specific, I mean, we have, you know, plus loans, private loans, unsub, sub on this form. It's better if they want to do any type of calculations, then an LAF form is definitely, I think, needed. Like you said, Jamie, just to kind of like, you know, get it in writing what they want, to clarify exactly, so there isn't any, you know, discrepancy in that. But as far as just being as simple as reinstating loans, emails will definitely suffice with that.
I mean, for me, it's kind of confusing because over the years, we always go back and forth on whether we are okay with receiving emails to cancel loans or to reinstate loans. And then we always decide, well, you know, we need this LAF form. So if we're going to require this form from the students, then it needs to be a student-friendly form. And maybe if they're going to cancel the loan or reinstate the loan, maybe it's not necessary for them to fill out the equation portion of it. And maybe we can do something like with the PCD form where it's like,
Well, there used to be reinstatement
pressing-
on the form, sorry.
yeah, like if you're clicking this, then you don't need to do this. But if you're clicking this, then you need to fill this. But I do think it needs to be a student-friendly form if we're going to require it.
But right now we aren't requiring this form for reinstatements or canceling loans. It's just for adjusting up and down, you know, amounts. Didn't we decide that Did we decide that a couple months ago to where an email will suffice?
Well, we've always asked for email for anything the student wants because they can't fill out the
Yeah.
form and they don't have the form. We always get an email also as an alternative. But we, because some students, like some students get confused with this form, so they just email us and we'll accept it. So because it's still them authorizing us to do what they want us to do.
And if
maybe-
it's more cut and dry, if it's more just black and white, I want to reinstate my loans or I want to cancel my loans. It's
Yeah. And there used to be reinstatement on the adjustment type also.
I
Just
think
like, I don't know, it's not on there. Cancel's on there, but not reinstatement.
Okay, well, I think this goes to show that there are some improvements that we could still have on this form. We need some more discussion as to the best function of it, the best way to add some more information without providing confusion. So I think we'll need to table that and move it to a different discussion. But I do appreciate the comments that have been had
Set
on
a
this.
meeting, Daniel, for this then?
So yeah, we'll have to do it at a
At
different time.
least one advisor in it.
Oh, certainly, right.
One or two advisors in it, the loan coordinator and you or me or whoever, wants to be involved in it.
So, and it's a good time to have this discussion for the 21-22 because there's still some time to make some changes. So I
We're not
appreciate
doing any
the
changes yet, so.
responses. Thank you.
and Jamie in it
Exactly,
maybe too, to give the
exactly.
GPS side. Jamie and
Yeah.
Martha in it.
Yeah,
too.
we probably want to make ours consistent. I would
Yeah.
as much as possible, which they aren't super consistent right now. In me comparing them side by
Yeah.
side.
I think that'd be helpful, especially when Martha starts to do LAF forms.
Yeah,
But see, they don't do the LA, Martha doesn't process the LAF forms on that side.
she's
No,
going
but
to.
we're
Was he
going-
Okay.
Yeah.
She
sorry.
hasn't been trained yet, but yeah, she's going to.
So it's being taken away from the FAOs and good.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Reassigned. Dare we look at the plus request form? We have about 7 minutes left in this training. I think we've covered a lot already with some of the new things as well as some updates and some review. The plus request form normally we use to get the amount for a student who has, or a parent borrower who has previously requested a maximum or unknown amount on their initial application. So we follow up to get a specific amount from the student, from the parent, to use for our actual origination process. So this goes along with the lines of how we want active confirmation of amounts from students and families so that they know how much they're borrowing. It's a little scary to me for a parent to go in and just say maximum amount and then just have something fall out later. And they'll see it with the aid offer, but just that active confirmation of this is the amount that I'm going to be borrowing is just a good practice that we want to be involved in. So that's where we fall with this plus loan request form.
This
Also,
was a mid-year revision this year too.
do you want to walk through what the revision was from the?
Well, basically, the original form was only designed to just request an amount if the parent left it blank on their plus application. And then somehow when last year when SOSE was doing this, it became used also to increase a loan, a plus loan. This is not for use for decrease, it's all used for increases for the plus loan, where a parent wants to request for another term or increase the current plus loan, provided they requested maximum and stuff like that. If they don't request maximum, they requested amount, they have to do a new plus application. So that was the revision that was made. So the parent didn't have to do another loan at all. Fill out another application to get another loan for the next term. provided they did max.
So I think this one ended up being a conversation with Stacy as well to see if a student was eligible to do a plus increase just using this form. So
Yeah, because
Stacy
the credit
confirmed that they had a max or max amount approved before.
And
the
if
credit
it hasn't, and if it hasn't, and, oh, sorry. And if the current plus loan hasn't expired.
Yeah, I just said
Everyone.
that.
Oh, did you? Oh, great minds think alike, Brad.
I forgot to say that. Yeah, Chuck.
Okay, Daniel, too, maybe somewhere on here we could have a definition of a parent who's eligible to do this. Step parents, grandparents, step parent, I mean, yeah, whatever, you know, I mean, yeah, like who,
There's
What's the
only 4
definition?
parents.
what?
There's only 4 parents, biological mom, biological dad, and step parent, stepmom, stepdad.
Yeah, but. see,
We
that
could add
doesn't-
that. Mhm.
It doesn't say that on there that a step parent can do it, so, and it doesn't even ask what the relationship is to the student.
But the thing is this is because this
It's
form is
paired to
only
the-
given to them if it's based on the plus application. It's not based on this form. They have to have an active plus application to complete this form.
Oh,
So-
okay.
And then
So
we
the
pair
part
it, we
of
pair it with the
is really
parent that's on the application. So we see what, who the parent is on this form, and then we pair it with the plus application that's has been applied for. So it's after the fact.
What
So
I
this-
see on this form is when parents come back and where it says indicate the amount you would like to borrow, they just write max again. Is there a way like where we can
Put a
add
number.
like, but do we take that? Do we send that back? Is there a place where we can indicate if you like are okay with the max, then click here or something like that?
Or
Yeah,
we
we
could
need to
do that. If we give it when they get the plus, when they get their offer letter, we tell them how much is their plus loan amount on there. And you know, we could change our full policy and do max if we wanted to. Just to let you know, it's just that they're gonna have a big credit balance if a person has $50,000 worth of plus loan.
I think
Yeah.
it's way better for them to indicate an amount personally.
Yeah, 'cause I don't want them
But there
putting
still
max.
is those
I
that
mean-
want the maximum amount. So I feel like Nina's question is valid. Like, is there a way to just say max, or do we still want them to have to indicate the maximum was 38, so I have to write down 38?
Do we tell them what their max is once, you know, we are looking at it?
It's on their offer letter.
And I
Well,
think
but
Stacy
Stacy
emails
sends
them as
this,
well.
yeah, when she sends this, she gives them the number.
Yeah, she gives them the number
Brad-
too.
Brad,
Maybe-
when you're saying it's on the offer letter though, that's after this, right?
No, it's before that. But it's also, when we send this form out to the parent, it's, Stacy will indicate this is the maximum email. I mean, maximum that you could get. It's always indicated. But please
Maximum.
contact your advisor to determine which amount that you how much you should actually borrow.
So is there a
Sometimes they request the max amount because, like for fall and spring, this is what I'm thinking, is that if they want a certain amount, they can always get more. So they don't have to apply, they don't have to do another plus application if they want to increase it later. So they might not want the max, they might want, so if their eligibility is say 30,000, but they might only want 20,000, but they might want that flexibility to go in later for the next semester or what have you to increase it. And that's why if it's still a current plus application that hasn't expired and they do request the max amount, then they can potentially increase it by another 10,000 with the same ID number for the same plus application. Is that correct, Brad? What I'm kind of,
But that's we always, our policy is that we want the students to be counseled by an advisor to give them their amount. That's second, we always tell them, you know, this is your maximum amount, but please contact your advisor to determine how much you need.
right.
You know, because we don't, you know, because as a school, we don't want them to borrow $50,000 plus loan. you know,
And they might be thinking that their max is something different. So, I mean, I would say that maybe just have that conversation. If they want the max amount, then just go over what they're indicating and what they want in their, you know, what they think the max amount is. Okay, well, this is your eligibility. You have $24,000. Do you want the $24,000? And then if they say, yes, I want that max amount, then maybe just as an advisor, write that in on the plus loan request form if you're having that conversation with them. Just
I feel like we can certainly do that. I think and Nina, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the point was, should we have an option where they can just indicate like a bullet point that says maximum amount instead of them writing it in? Because
Then
we're still sending
that's
the
true.
email indicating what the maximum amount is. We're still having the conversations if they do
Yeah.
engage us. Sometimes they're getting this form from the website. Sometimes they're getting this form directly from the email. Sometimes they are looking at the award letter. So the information still is going to be there at the end of the day. But I think it's just noting, do we want to make them indicate a specific amount, regardless of whether or not that amount is indeed the maximum amount, or just have a bullet that says indicate
Max
the
amount.
amount, or just click here where you still say
up to
the
your
max.
budget, up to your, yeah.
So
Just-
that's
just
a
offer
policy
that
change.
option, but offer that option, but do you have to, we just have to explain what maximum amount is.
But that's a policy change that we need to talk about at a leadership level. So I'll go ahead and add that to our leadership team meeting for this next Tuesday.
Yeah, that is a
We need to
policy.
go into, we need to go into late fee training now. We're at the end of our time. Is there any wrap up that you want to do,
How many
Daniel?
forms are left, Daniel?
That was the last one I wanted to go through.
Yeah, it sounds like the loan forms are the ones that are.
The most highly
It's complicated,
interactive.
and as much as we want to, we want to make it as student friendly as we can. At the end of the day, it's still complicated. So there's going to be some back and forth with explaining things and going through it with them, but let's do our best to make it as, self-service as we can.
Mhm.
Daniel, just to reiterate for now though, an email regarding reinstating or canceling will suffice. They don't have to fill out an LAF form for that, right?
For those purposes, correct.
Okay, so we're clear on that for now, and unless it changes, then we'll hear it changing.
But for adjustments also, if it's an emergency, they can't have access to a form or they're not getting a form, we will accept an email for
And
adjustments.
they can let me know what amount they want to adjust
Yeah.
up and down.
Yeah, it's just more challenging to get it right with the adjustment. But thank you everyone for your participation in this conversation. I think it was very helpful. And I'm glad that we could, thank you again to Marlon for making all these updates. Looking forward to using these new forms for next year.
Thank you, Marla, for all the work on it.
Thanks, Marla.
Advisors, whoever's in the late fee training can just stay in this Zoom.
Thanks, Marlon.
Otherwise, bye guys.
Bye. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Bye, guys.
Kick them all out, Molly.
If you're not in the loan training, you can drop off this Zoom, or sorry, the late.
Hi.
We're here, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even look at the calendar.
I feel like Marlon might not be. Oh, no.
Now she's up.
She's like, fine, bye.
All right. So I sent you guys all the training doc, if you want to grab it. So welcome. Hi, you guys. How is everyone? Everyone doing good on Friday?
Enjoying my 2-day week.
I feel like the loan conversations sometimes just they can go over my head, but then also it's just so fun to see Brad and Stacy because I feel like it was a simple question and they're like, here's everything that would implicate, like, should we just put max on the form? But it just made me laugh. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
You're like a simple yes or no.
Yeah.
No, it's a good discussion to have. We've always
Absolutely.
required them to, choose an amount because we want people to be informed about what they're borrowing and But, if it's confusing for them, you know, maybe we do it. I don't know. We'll talk about it. All right.
Hey,
So
Molly, where
welcome.
I'm struggling finding where you
Yeah.
sent it.
I'll just put it in the chat. I shared the document
Oh,
by
okay.
email, but I'll just put it in the chat.
You did? I can't find her.
I didn't get an email.
Oh, I see it. I
Is
found it.
I like the sound effect. Is that what you do every time you find something?
Mhm. Yes, you have to add joy to your life. Or you'll
By the
fall
way,
apart.
speaking of joy, this is the best planner of all time. If you guys ever use a planner, this is the one from Office Max, and it is literally the best. And it comes with stickers, people.
Everyone
You
should
can
get
decorate. You can
I haven't got
decorate
a
your
new planner.
planner.
I'm not planning for this year.
Just whatever happens, happens, right?
I found my
have to
planner
have a
from
list.
last year, and it was like full to the, you know, whatever, all the way until March, and then it was like there's nothing after it. I was like, that's so sad. What a waste of
Well,
planner.
the really weird thing about like when a couple of you guys came back in for the beginning of the semester and everybody's desk calendars were on March, that was like a little bit creepy. I hadn't gone into any offices and
It was like
seen
the
that.
Titanic, the
Wait.
time just stopped.
Yeah, it was like a
Isn't
time
it
capsule.
still March though?
I know.
Right?
All right, well, welcome to late fee and financial hold training. I pulled Katie in to do some of the hold training because she's, you know, kind of in it a little more in Workday. But let's start with late fees. So of course, today is spring mini term late fees. And we probably won't need the whole hour for this, but if it goes that long, fine. But it's just really a refresher for all of you guys. So late fees. So late fees are not Workday delivered. This is not something that happens automatically in Workday. So what happens is there's a report that calculates the late fee and Katie loads the charges as an EIB. And Katie, did you have a time today that you're going to do late fees?
Monique and I are scheduled to meet at 2:30 to process them.
Okay, can you guys send me a report once we know how much we're looking at?
Yes.
So unfortunately, we always have a population of students that get late fees each semester. Now, this is not how Point Loma wants to make their money. So the attitude that we're just, you know, we just want to get that cash is not accurate. We would much rather help them to get stuff paid beforehand, but there does need to be a deadline and a consequence for late payments. So we have that late fee go on. So today is the spring mini term late fee date. The spring semester late fee date is the 26th of March. Now this year, just so that if you scroll down, you'll see the timing of financial holds. Usually our late fees come on before our financial holds. This is the weird semester. The calendars are different. So for this time, the spring semester hold actually is going to apply before the spring semester late fee. Just so that everybody's aware that this time it's usually like payment bill due date, late fee date, holds date. It's now due date, holds date, late fee date for spring. So just be aware of that. We charge 5% of the outstanding balances, the outstanding balance only on accounts that owe over 500. I put 500 and above. I should have said over 500. Over 500.
So yesterday in our meeting, Cindy said that when they do the late fee for mini term, then those students are going to get a late fee. And then when we do the late fee again for the spring, then they'll get a late fee again. Is it going to be like just on the amount for spring, or is it going to include the mini term? Or because I feel like it's different than what our policy is, because I always get students asking like, how many times like do you charge the late fee? And we say just one time. So this is different since we'll be applying it twice to a certain amount.
Sort of. Now, it's not totally different though, because we still charge. So if we're thinking about this, like moving the first summer term to the winter, we still charge late fees on summer, right? So it's whatever that outstanding balance is. So if they have ended the spring term with their principal balance and a late fee, and then we also have summer on there, we're still charging the late fee on the full outstanding balance. So technically, we're kind of charging a late fee twice if the student hasn't paid by then. So we charge the mini term late fee on that outstanding balance. If they still haven't paid for spring, it's whatever that remaining outstanding balance is that's going to be
They can
charged.
still register for the next semester if they have a balance.
Well, summer, so like normally they have registered for summer in January or February. I forget when summer registration opens.
Usually-
So they're all registered. We've already charged, spring. But we haven't had a late fee or a hold go on yet. So when they register for summer, they have a lot of freedom for that term, because we don't place holds before summer registration opens. Before fall registration opens, yes, but not before summer. So it's a good question. But again, people get heated about it. Like this is not how we want to make our money. So let's help as many people as possible get paid before this becomes an issue. Any other questions so far?
Emily just asked one in the chat. No past due balance right now means no late fee for mini term, right?
Correct.
So that's a little confusing, and we've kind of talked about this yesterday, but like in reviewing some of our mini term students, like right now, some of the students I've seen have a current due balance that's not reflected as a past due balance, and it's a current due balance that's their mini term balance. But it's not showing as past due. So the student wouldn't be getting a late fee, even though there's still technically an outstanding balance for the mini term.
So you're seeing,
It's because they have anticipated aid that's covering the spring semester. So the windows are like, oh, what's due? This is all covered. You don't actually owe anything, which is fine. Because when aid disperses in spring, that aid will apply to what it can apply to. Then the student will owe whatever they owe outside of that, potentially for spring semester. And if they don't pay that balance, it will become past due and then they will get a late fee. Right now, we don't really care because we have anticipated aid that's covering their balance as it stands now. So what we need to collect on is whatever they owe for the spring semester, and that may include mini terms if their aid doesn't cover it. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. It's just a little, I feel like that's been one of the challenge. I mean, this is a one-time semester for us, but I think that's one of the challenges on our staff where it's like, we have to communicate a very confusing message to students where it's like, well, yeah, it shows as current due right now, but that doesn't really matter, even though we're putting a late fee on and enforcing it and emailing you noting like, this is your current mini term balance. But in my head, I like spoke to someone yesterday who had a mini term balance and a past due balance. And I was like, well, I know you're not going to get a late fee, but I'm still enforcing this has to be paid and it has to be less than 500. But it's like tomorrow, if he looks at his account, he's not going to have a late fee because he doesn't have a past due balance, even though I told him he needs to pay his balance for the mini term. So it's just on that end, it's a little confusing. And I feel like I didn't fully understand that when we first entered the mini term. And I know it's kind of a moot point since we're like putting late fees today, but I think that was a little confusing for the team. And I just want to clarify that understanding, like, do we have that right? That it is indeed the past due student, even if a student has charges due technically, and they may or may not have anticipated aid covering it, because that student, I don't think he did have anticipated aid covering that balance.
Mo, I do the same thing like you do. So, they end up wanting to pay it or plan to pay it because even though it's not showing us a past due balance, but it's showing us an existing balance for the mini term, I tell them encourage them to pay it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the best way to explain that is like, because this balance right now is covered potentially by anticipated aid for the spring semester, right now you don't have a past due balance, but that's because we're expecting something to cover it. But in reality, some of that aid that can't go towards the mini term, right? Is that what you mean?
I think it just kind of depends on the student. Like,
Yeah.
Who was the student you were talking to yesterday?
that's who I'm trying to find right now. I think it was Brandon Voges, which he has ROTC.
When you say that some aid can't go to cover mini term, Katie, like what do you mean by that?
Well, like merit scholarship, for instance. If a student has a $6,000 merit scholarship, it's going to show as anticipated aid for whatever their balance is. But it actually doesn't go to mini term, it goes to the spring regular academic period, right? So like when it disperses, it'll cover what it can cover, but it won't apply to mini term because it's a scholarship for spring.
Yeah.
Does that
Which
make sense?
I feel like I get that, and that makes sense to me.
But I totally understand what you mean.
Like like Brandon Voges, for instance, he's getting a bill or a notification indicating you have a balance of 1,380, and he just paid his past due balance. Bless his heart. But he has ROTC and Provost. Those things cannot go to the mini term. We know that, and he has this outstanding balance. He would be one to get a late fee if it was based specifically on the mini term. So for me, like advising him, I'm like, okay, well, you need to pay that down, but tonight, he's not going to get that late fee if it's based off of the past due balance. And it's just like, how?
Right, but also think about it this way. So if he doesn't pay it now and doesn't pay it until spring, then he'll get a late fee eventually. It's just like, it's totally a different way of advising. And I understand that part of it because you're saying like, yes, you don't really technically owe this right now, but you do at the same time. The due date is the 18th. It's not technically past due because we're waiting for aid to cover your balance. But at some point, you're going to owe this balance. So you can either pay it now or you can pay it later. But obviously, you want them to pay it now.
I get that. I think it's just that we have communicated a late fee for the mini term specifically, and it's not going to be applied to the appropriate students because he should get a late fee today because his mini term balance is not taken care of. But a spring aid is covering his butt essentially, and if he doesn't pay it by the spring due date, then he's subject to a late fee. But like in the actual term, I feel like I'm seeing it from the student's perspective as well as our perspective. I get our processes. I understand that their aid is covering, but from the student's perspective, how, like, that's so confusing for them to say, like, I have been communicated to you again and again about a late fee date. I mean, he's looking out, he's not getting a late fee. Eventually he'll need to pay it. I totally understand that. But I feel like that's also kind of a miscommunication. And I feel like it would make me as a student just like, what's going on with this office? Like, why didn't I get a late fee? I mean, yeah, I'm thankful, but also that's so confusing. Why did I have to go through the trouble of figuring this out when I had until the 15th to actually pay this, you know?
My question then is, what was the email communication then that, because our email communication has always been on past due balances. So if a student logs into their Workday and looks at their account, doesn't see a past due balance.
I don't feel like we frame emails that way. It's if you have an outstanding balance for the term, that's usually how it's related. And maybe that's just a misunderstanding on my part in making those emails, but I didn't understand about the past due balance till this week personally. And I feel like,
oh, okay.
Like,
yeah, I mean, we don't post late fees on outstanding balances. We just post them on whatever the past due balance is, and if it's over 500.
Is there a reason?
Completely paid off? Are they fine?
Yeah.
I need to let people like, you're paid, you're good.
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah, so if they have a zero past due balance, we don't care about them. Or do we? Like, do we want to run like we've been running our mini term reports and look at who's current due, who's got an outstanding balance in spring? And if part of that outstanding balance is in the mini term, I mean, we could charge them a late fee, but like, we're not in the business of charging late fees. At the end of the day, we just want people to pay. We don't care about late fees. It's just part of our policy, right? So it's like, do we care, or we just communicate to those people now going forward, like, this is what you need to be aware of, is like, you have a balance for mini term technically, and your aid for spring technically looks like it's covering it, but it won't. So eventually you're going to need to pay this balance. So I don't know. I totally hear you though. I get it.
Yeah, and
Very
I
confusing.
think part of the problem is we're in a brand new system and our academic calendar is jacked up, and it's like, it's just confusing this time. And so I think moving forward, it's not always going to be like this. It's just this one term that is just very special. And we just are going to give it all of our love. And I feel like, yeah, trying to explain it, I'm sure is really difficult. And because of that confusion, I think that leads us into the next section, and that's exceptions. Cindy was going to clearly communicate her expectations for you on exceptions during this meeting. So that will, probably happen next week at your staff meeting or your team meeting. I think that we probably want to really listen to students this time. If there's confusion, again, we don't want to open up a can of worms and forgive everybody's late fees, because at the end of the day, they didn't pay. But I think that, like we've tried to be this whole last year, we want to err on the side of grace. But I want you guys to have that conversation with Cindy so that you guys are on the same page. Like, when can the advisors make that decision? When does it have to go to Cindy? And she'll communicate that this next week. So any other questions on this very special late fee term?
But if they are paid off completely, like they paid everything, they're fine. Okay, because I don't want like later some aid needing to be adjusted or something, like they don't have enough. Like there's some students who just have so much aid that it's institutional or whatever, and it's meant to only cover the regular semester. But
I mean, if there's a student, do you have someone that you want us to look at? I think that we kind of need to be a little careful with the fact that aid has not yet been adjusted for the spring semester, because we're still giving them time to register. So for those students that are under full time, like we were talking about in last week's training, for refunds and book advances, you still do need to check that spring term registration load to make sure that they are full-time and then nothing needs to be adjusted. If they're less than full-time, that's a red flag to go, well, wait a minute, we need to look at, are you going to register full-time? If not, we need to look at how we're going to have to adjust your aid and see. But again, they're going to be fine and not get a late fee for the mini term probably. And then they will get a late fee for spring. So there's some time to work out all those details.
And to clarify the process for late fees, I am literally only pulling students with past due balances. So like anybody else on our report, we just get rid of. So that if that helps answer your question, those are the people that are getting a late fee, is if they have a balance in the past due window, that's who's getting one for mini term.
Let me change the language from outstanding balance to past due.
Can you look at Preston Sim? Because he owes like $460 for mini term, but he still has like a past due balance, and I don't believe it's from fall.
He might have
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think it was past due, right? It wasn't in the past due. He was just confused, Mo.
He doesn't have a past due balance. He has
Okay.
a current
I think
due
he was just
balance for
confused.
spring.
Thanks.
Yeah, he just owes for spring.
So it's all about learning the new language because we would always kind of refer to it as an outstanding balance in the past. Right now, it's the difference between current balance, past due balance. So it's like we've moved to another country and we're studying abroad and we're learning their language. So Katie just left right when we were going to move on to holds. So that's fun. But
I do want to note with late fee waivers, since we don't have, and clarify, I don't think that advisors are going to have the opportunity to do anything to the charge at this point in time. Like, I think only myself and then anyone above me has the privilege to do that. I think Kevin and Melissa are trying to work on changing that charge, but I think it will happen in spring 21. It won't be right now in the mini term. So continue to use that late fee waiver tab on the balance tracker so that I think Katie, myself, and Cindy will be going in there and reviewing that so that we can waive if the student does get a late fee, we can go ahead and review that.
awesome.
Is there a date when you're looking at the past due balance to charge them for the late fee? Is it the date and time of when you run your list?
Yeah, it's the actual late fee date because we're allowing people to pay right up until the end. So it's not like we would pull the list 5 days before and then someone who, so it's always like right on the deadline day.
On the deadline date, okay.
Yeah. So financial holds, this is Workday delivered. So this is a configuration that happens automatically. Now the hold is on the charge, right? So if charges come on at different times, there's going to be a different hold on that on when that happens. But the dates that we're looking at are based on when we charge the bulk of the charges. So it's like when we charge the tuition, the fees, the housing, right? So our expected financial holds days for this spring mini term and the spring semester are the 15th of February and the 15th of March for financial holds. So what does the financial hold do? It prohibits the ability to make changes in student registration, grades applying to the transcript, or as we refer to it, the earned grades policy, participation in commencement, and the release of the diploma. We can no longer hold up a transcript for an unpaid balance, but we can not translate grades to their transcripts, and we can hold up their diploma. So what has changed between CX and the Workday process? So now these are automatically applied based on the charge due date. It used to be that we would manually go in and like run the holds process. And now it's just automatically done by Workday. Anticipated aid is considered. So in the past in CX, it was only looking at the raw outstanding balance. It wasn't taking any anticipated aid into consideration. So we had this whole last semester where the undergrad team had to go in and remove any anticipated aid. So the problem with that is that they're removing it. And then when a student goes, oh, I ignored the 50 emails you sent me, now I want my loan. Then they have to go back in, redo everything. So it's kind of a pain. So they configured a date control in Workday to stop displaying the anticipated payments. So now the financial aid team doesn't have to remove all that aid. It's just based on a Workday configuration. And please, when you think about it, thank Kevin and Melissa for doing that, because that's a huge time saver for the financial aid team, huge stress saver for them to not have to go ahead and do that. So I keep saying it over and over again, you guys, but like we have unicorns on this team, and I just am so thankful for the ability to go in and make our work more straightforward. So I don't want to gloss over that. VA aid and ROTC aid is the exception to that rule though. So they can, we are taking those into consideration. So Katie, if you could, because you understand these pieces a lot better than I do. The override hold, the remove hold, and the update hold.
Yeah, let me. They're getting loud, sorry. So there's a report in Workday that we built with students with active holds, and it's already pre-filtered to show you what, like for our purposes, past due balance would be the one that we care about. So, someday they'll go back to school, right? Okay, so Erin Villegas is our first student. So the difference between the three of these, override hold basically allows you to, even though the student has a past due balance, like let's say VA was a perfect example for going into fall 20, we had all this anticipated aid that we knew was coming in CS, but it actually didn't live there quite yet. So it was like the student had a past due balance, but they really didn't because their balance was paid. So we would go in and actually override the hold to say, we know this guy is good to go, allow him to register, but at this date, we should have the VA money. So if we don't, put a hold on it, essentially, is kind of the reason for the override. This student has a past due balance. Let me look at, the update hold we don't really care about. I was kind of digging around in there and I'm like, do we really care about this at all? I keep clicking on the wrong thing. And we don't ever really use that. The only thing we'll use will be remove hold and to override a hold. Update hold doesn't really do anything because if you look at your options, the only thing you can really change is the institution, but and the academic period, which it's not specific to the academic period, it's just specific to the balance. So it's like, this doesn't really do anything. So just ignore update hold. We're not ever going to use it. But the active hold for past due balance to remove a hold obviously would just take it off. Override hold would give you the option to say, like records needs to drop a student, but they have a past due balance, or they need to add a class so that they can get aid to pay for the past semester. That happens in GPS a lot. So we would apply an override to say they're good to go, let them register, and then put the hold on tomorrow or whatever. So we would put an end date on when we want that hold to go back on, assuming the student has taken care of whatever they need to do. So those are really the biggest differences between the two. The other thing we've kind of talked about, which I think is important for you guys to know too, is the refund hold. We have an option to apply a refund hold to a student. So let's say they change the direct deposit information and we don't want to refund them yet, and we know it's going to be Title IV. And because that process is automatic, we don't want to refund them. Or let's say they dropped, we know their aid is changing, something like that. This is something I typically do as I'm reviewing drop reports, but this is available to you. So if a student ever said, you know, they got a PLUS loan, but they want to set up direct deposit and you don't want me to refund it automatically yet, then you would just apply a refund hold, and it'll actually prevent even me or Monique, if you type in that student's name, it'll like give you a big red error and say this isn't going to work because it has a refund hold. So that's just a little side note, just so you guys are aware that that's there. But were there any other questions about, or any questions about holds? I know this is kind of just an overview.
And you guys probably experienced this during the fall semester, but because there are different charge due dates, there are different dates that people, you know, would go on hold for something. So if a student pays off whatever balance would have caused a financial hold, and then something else that was due 5 days later takes them up over that hold's threshold, then a hold would automatically go on. So just because a student isn't on hold on the hold's due date doesn't mean that in a few days they couldn't. I don't feel like that's going to happen very often, because the stuff that comes on after after the main portion of the the charges is going to be fines. I mean, if a student decides to register for like a unit over block 2 weeks into the semester, then, then they're going to go on hold 2 weeks after, the bulk of the other students would go on hold. But just keep in mind that the hold is based on the due date. So any other fun holds questions? And, not a super fun time of the year, late fees and holds. So I think, our goal is not to make money. It's not to punish anyone. It's just, there are due dates. We need to be able to operate based on when we're expecting revenue to come in. And so there are consequences for not paying on time. Financial holds. It's irresponsible for Point Loma to allow a student that has however much they owe. If they haven't paid it, that's telling us they don't have the ability to pay it. It's irresponsible for us to then allow them to take on more of a burden that they can't pay. So we're not trying to punish anyone. We're trying to be good stewards of our resources and help others be responsible for the choices that they're making. So it's not about us being jerks, although sometimes they feel that and then they take it out on you, and I hate that. But we're just, when you're having those difficult conversations, we are trying to help them. Even when they're annoyed, we're still trying to help them get resolved. So anything else before I release you to go have a fun Friday? You guys all look cute. This is like old times. It's like Molly and the student accounts meeting again. It's so fun.
We need a band name.
Yeah.
Molly and the account. That's good.
So when we're able to go ahead and lift holds, will we do another training like this where we'll go through actually lifting the holds?
We can lift holds now. Do you mean the late fee?
Yes, the late fee.
Yeah, if that changes, we'll set up something else for you guys so you know what's going on. All right, kids. Well, have a great Friday. Cindy's gone, so if you need anything that she would normally help you with, feel free to reach out to Monique or me. And Katie will let us know when those glorious little late fees post. And
yeah, we're scheduled to meet at 2:30, Monique. So we'll just pull the report together. It won't take that long.
Okay.
And
Okay,
I actually have instructions, believe it or not, but I need to add a screenshot. So maybe you can help me.
all right, you guys are good to go. Thank you so much for your time. I hope these trainings are helpful, but let me know if you have any other suggestions. Welcome back, Alicia. We're just ending.
You did it. Bye.
All right, bye guys.